Hello, friends. Patrick McFarlane here of the Liberty Weekly podcast. Welcome to episode 53. And this is, we're having a guest on, Shaheen and Kyle from Kyle's Fyles, Foreign Policy Focus as well. And we're going to be getting to the bottom of the Iran protests, which happened between the new year here, between 2017 and 2018. And Shaheen was actually in Iran. And listeners of the show will remember that Shaheen was a guest earlier. He's currently residing in Adelaide, Australia. And so I'll pitch it over to you with that, Shaheen. Do you want to just reintroduce yourself and tell us, the audience, a little bit about your experience?
All right, cheers. Hey, my name's Shaheen, and yeah, I live in Australia. And near the end of 2017, I went on a holiday back to Iran, which is where I'm originally from. And yeah, was there for about a month, and I got to see how the protests started, and yeah, just know a lot about the whole culture and how everyone feels about the government.
So you weren't at any point in any personal danger, were you?
Nah, I don't think I was.
Okay. Yeah. And when we were talking before, you were saying that some of your family went out too in the protests and they witnessed a little bit.
Yeah, my dad went out.
Okay. And did was he afraid, or at any time did he fear for his safety?
Uh, no, because he said since he was an older person, they weren't gonna annoy him or try to arrest him because they usually go after the young people, the young idealistic crazies. So that's why he didn't want me to go because he was afraid that they might arrest me. Because you see all the news about people going and getting arrested and they're never heard of again. And especially since we had a flight like 2 days after the protest started, just didn't want to risk missing the flight.
Yeah, probably a good move.
Yeah.
So So, what was your understanding of what really set the protests off? Because what I heard and from Daniel McAdams and Ron Paul was that it was over. Was it the price of eggs or something?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It was eggs. People
Okay.
call it the egg revolution.
Yeah. So, well, why don't you just kind of walk us through, your trip and when you got there, and then how this all kind of started?
All right. Well, when I first went to Iran, I wasn't really it wasn't really political at all. I didn't think of it in terms of any sort of political things. But I went there and just hung around with friends and family. What I noticed was it's almost universal for people to be hating on the government right now because of all the inflation and the all the problems that the government's been causing the people. Like they have no freedom. The education system's more screwed up than here in the West. Like I'll tell you about that. You you pretty much you know how high school here is pretty much 12 years, and how you do on your 12th year is what gets you into university. In Iran, at the end of your 12 years, there's this big exam which lasts for about 5 hours, and in it you go through every course from year 10, 11, and 12 all at once, and how good you do on that determines what you study. So if I want to do engineering there, I'd have to also study Arabic, religion, geography, chemistry, and all that just to go into like mechanical engineering, which doesn't require any of those. So yeah, a lot of students are pissed off about that, and they all pretty much a lot of people just want to come over or at least move out of Iran. The youth, for the most part, is very westernized. Like you see groups that have a couple of gay members in them, and no one really cares about it. Most of the people, even the more traditional people, the older people, they still dislike the government and are now saying that they regret bringing in the Islamic government over the king who was there before 1979. And the biggest problem I think is the inflation problem, because Iran's money just got inflated like crazy, like the Federal Reserve on steroids.
Do they have a central bank?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Okay. And I don't know too much about how so like as kind of a layman, in the West in terms of foreign policy, that's kind of been a focus is, I'm just kind of learning this stuff. But a lot of people would assume that any any ignorant person in the United States would just assume that Iran is as Trump would say, a shithole or something like that, you know, because in the Middle East, no one knows anything. What is it like in Iran?
Well, to be honest, it is a bit of a shithole. It's a place that was built centuries ago, kind of designed for a small population. And then, like in the cities, it's just packed with cars, just packed and packed. Everyone just driving at once. It's just constant traffic. Because I reckon the cities were made for small populations. And instead of expanding on the cities, they just got more and more people to go there, and they built up instead of building wide. That's a certain problem. And just, well, culturally, there's a lot of corruption. Like, to get a job at all, you'd have to know someone to help you out. You have to have your hands in someone else's pocket. Either a friend or a friend of a friend or family member or someone has to be somewhere high up to actually help you out. Otherwise, good luck finding a job.
Okay. And so to kind of bring Kyle into this, one thing that I have like maybe a misconception when it comes to foreign policy, because you know, like I said, I haven't been studying this for a while, but when it comes to the conditions in the Middle East, was it true that in the 60s and like in the 50s, before the US really got involved in the Middle East, that countries over there were relatively stable and westernized in a certain sense?
I'm not sure about the other countries, but I'm pretty sure Iran was. Like, you see pictures from Iran pre-Islamic Revolution, and yeah, it was more Western. It still had its own Iranian culture, but it was just a lot freer and a lot more liberal, like classically liberal in terms of culture compared to what it is now. The Islamic factor was like how Christianity is in the West. It's just something for personal for people to do. It wasn't a theocracy.
Okay. And so maybe Kyle, maybe you can walk us through the Islamic Revolution or Shaheen.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I would really have to say on the Islamic Revolution would just, you know, it happened in 1979 after, I don't know, nearly 30 years of the government installed by the United States. And I found one of the more interesting things that Shaheen has said is that people are now longing for the days of, you know, the United States supported government. I was wondering if you maybe just a couple of the reasons why that is. Is it just that the situation in Iran is so bad now? Are there particular policies of the Shah that the people would like to go back to?
Well, it is because of the situation right now. It's because of all the expensive prices, extreme unemployment, and just lack of freedom. I mean, most kids my age just have nothing to do. All they do is drive around, buy a packet of cigarettes, and just smoke it while hanging around. Maybe go to a swimming pool for an hour. Other than that, there really isn't much to do. You can't go out and like the way you would in the West, and just talking to a girl. If a policeman sees you hanging around with a girl, they'll come and separate you. So, okay, you each go your separate ways. So yeah, a lot of people are sick of that, sick of not having any opportunities, and because, like I said before, the only way to, like, I think this is a deliberate thing what they do with the education system. They make it so you have, like, your final year when you're 18 and you want to go to university, you have to study like crazy for about a year long, 12 hours a day. And that's what one of my friends is doing right now. Like all these courses from year 10, 11, and 12, and each year has about 10 courses, 10, 11, 12 courses. They have to study all the 3 years worth of school, and it's not just like 4 subjects, it's 10 subjects, just study heaps and heaps, just so they can have a chance of going to university. And then in university, it just gets harder and harder. It's not like, and they don't get any time off. Like here in Australia, a semester is 12 weeks, and I get 2 semesters. The work's intense, but I get a lot of time off. In Iran, it's just constant work, work, work. So I think they've made it in a way so that to indoctrinate the people as to, like, you have to be a slave for this Islamic government, and that so they won't have any time to go around, have any fun, and you know.
Shaheen, when you talk about people being upset with the government, is there a particular portion of the government that people are maybe more upset with, either the Ayatollah or Rouhani, or is it all just, you know, we kind of hate those guys. And I'm just kind of thinking of the United States, where you have a lot of people who, love the government but hate Trump.
Most people just hate the supreme leader Khamenei. They're more okay with Rouhani, because Rouhani's a reformist. What they want him to they support him for the most part, and they're just against the whole theocracy. Really, they're against the whole thing, but they support Rouhani because Rouhani's a reformist and is trying to reform everything.
Okay. Speaking of the reforms, I read a story not too long ago that I guess Tehran police were relaxing their enforcement of the dress code. Can you say if that's true or not, or if that's happening?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I went to Tehran for a bit. We went to a theater to watch a live play of Oliver Twist in Persian. That was pretty fun. And what I noticed is a lot of the women that just had their hijabs down. And like usually in normal cities and like smaller cities, like my own city or just around the place, they wear their hijabs like halfway, so you can see a bit of their hair. In the like artsy places of Tehran, they have it pretty much all the way down. Like it's essentially as if they're not wearing it, as if they're just wearing a scarf. Yeah, I thought that was pretty good.
Okay. So, do people see those reforms as being at all meaningful, or is this a direction that the general, is this the trend of Iran to move with some of these liberalizations, or is this just maybe like a one-off thing?
It's a trend. I mean, if you compare since 1979 to now, for a while, women weren't allowed to wear any sort of tight clothing at all, which they do now. They weren't allowed to show any bit of hair or makeup or anything, which they do now. And they weren't even allowed to ride bicycles until about 12 years ago.
So how do people in Iran feel about the United States? Because as soon as you have these protests erupting, you have, Donald Trump and all the neocons come out, and everyone in Washington is applauding all of the protests. And it just seems a little fishy, especially when you're saying that, oh, all these protests erupt over eggs of all things. And I know that, just drawing on, the Liberty Report episode where they were talking about it, just for spontaneous protests to erupt all across the country for eggs just seemed a little fishy. And they were kind of talking about, CIA handprints or something on this. So just to get back to my question, how do people feel about the United States and our politicians saying things like that?
Well, for the most part, it's very mixed. For the most part, people aren't very fond of the United States, even I'm not even sure, actually. A lot of them do like the US because of the westernized culture and the freedom and everything. But a lot of people resent the government for the foreign policy and like the nuclear accord and everything. From what I noticed, people like seeing Trump saying, "Oh, good on you," and like all the politicians and neocons supporting it. They were happy about that for the most part.
Are they wanting more US intervention, do you think?
Again, that's half. Like I'm not sure exactly where everyone stands as a whole, but I know some people certainly are. Some people actually want war. They actually like want Trump to invade. They say, well, sure, it might destabilize, but maybe something better will come out of it. But yeah, obviously that's not going to be the case. Then some people say, okay, it's good that America supports us, so we just don't want them to invade and intervene. Or if they do intervene, just help make it what do you call it? An intellectual war. Like help bring the ideas over and let us reform, not military.
Shaheen, what is the support for the MEK like in Iran? Is there any support for the group? And were you aware at all of, I think there was a pipeline bombing in southern Iran just before the protesting started.
Which group was that?
I don't think it was the MEK that bombed that pipeline in southern Iran. I forget, maybe Jabhat something. I'd have to go back and find the particular story. But maybe just the question about the MEK. Is there much support for them in Iran?
I'm not sure what the MEK is. Sorry, can you say what it was? Like, what does MEK stand for?
Yeah, let me look it up real quick, and I'll send you a translation.
All right.
But just in the meantime here, once you get that, until you get that link, so we knew that there was social media that was being shut down, Facebook, Twitter, to try and prevent the spread of these protests. Did you experience the shutdown at all?
Yeah, well, Facebook and Twitter and all them are already blocked, and they have been blocked for years. Like when I was in Iran in 2015, they were blocked then. Most people have VPNs, like a VPN application they just open and use. But the app that most people use for communication is an app called Telegram on their phones, and a lot of people use Instagram as well. And those two were censored during the protests.
Okay. Did you try it personally?
Well, yeah, I use Telegram for communications to people from Iran, like even from Australia, and that was shut down. It did work with a VPN, but I noticed that my 3G, my mobile data stopped working, and like how convenient. The SIM card, the SIM card company is owned by the government, so of course it's going to stop working.
Yeah. Yeah. So all right, so let's go back to when you went over there. So maybe just kind of a personal question. How many people do you keep in contact with in Iran? Is it family, friends, stuff like that?
Essentially, yeah, just the family, and it's a rather big family as well. I keep in contact, but usually it's just my friends. I have a lot of friends from childhood, and so when I went back in 2015, met a few friends there as well. So yeah, just not that many people. I'm not some sort of a social media god with like 10,000 friends in Iran. Just
Right.
approximately about 10, 15 friends and just family.
Okay. And so how, being from Australia, you don't have like dual citizenship, do you?
Yeah, I do.
Oh, you do. Okay. So was it relatively painless going back home? Like, what does the customs look like?
Well, the main problem going back was my main problem going back was just conscription in Iran. Because once you turn 18, if you're not enrolled in a university in Iran, you get sent for 2 years mandatory service. But I am enrolled in university here, so I had to get an approval letter to prove that I am studying, so then I could get so that I could be allowed to leave the country without having to do military service.
Man,
That was a bit of a hassle. Yeah.
yeah, that would scare me. That would be kind of scary.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you get there, and then do they have like a TSA kind of thing? Do they scan
No, actually, Iran's not that bad. They didn't really go through our luggage and everything. They just put it through one of these devices that has a scanner. And the funniest thing happened on my way from Australia to Iran. I took a bag with me that had a knife in one of the hidden pockets. And then when they put it through the X-ray, like, oh, we have to do this again. I was like, Jesus Christ, there's nothing in there. Then they brought out a knife, like, what's this? I was like, holy shit, a knife? I don't remember putting that there. Yeah, had to sacrifice the knife and throw it away. But it was crappy anyway. But yeah, they didn't check too much. I think they checked 1 or 2 bags, and they're like, okay, all good. And it's the same in Australia for when we came back, although Australia took a bit longer. We got a luggage, then we had to go through some stuff, and they said, okay, how much cash are you carrying? Which I don't know why it matters. And then they opened 1 or 2 of our luggage cases, and they're like, okay, all good, you can go in. Yeah, they weren't too crazy about it.
Okay, that's funny. You basically have to get cavity searched here, but
Yeah.
so you go through customs. Where in Iran were you staying? Just general location, maybe not too specific.
Well, there is I was at Tehran for a bit,
Okay.
But since my family lives in a town called Hamadan, just it's a relatively smaller town, so I was there for the most part. Then we traveled a bit around. We went to north to see other family and friends, and then yeah, just round about that, just to the capital Tehran, my own city, Hamadan, just traveling a bit around. The traveling was fun though. Like in the we got in a car. My dad hired a car where I sat in the back. Didn't have to wear a seatbelt in the middle of a highway. That was pretty fun.
Nice. I remember sometimes this is kind of anecdotal and a sidetrack, but yeah, I remember when I was studying abroad in Germany and we were on the highway, and the one moment I realized, man, this really isn't the US, is when one of my friends cracked open a beer, and I was like, is this illegal? And he's like, well, we're not driving, are we? And
Damn.
I experienced freedom.
Wow. So wait, it's illegal to drink while you're in a car in the US?
Yeah, no one can drink in the car.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
What the hell? What kind of law is that?
I know, right? So did you have any more questions, Kyle?
Yeah. So the group I was talking about earlier, Shaheen, is the People's Mujahideen of Iran.
Oh, okay, I get that. I just didn't know the abbreviation. I know that group.
Okay. Is there any support for them in Iran, like popular support at all?
Not really. They were pretty big because when around 1979 when the revolution happened, the there was a bit of a split on the Islamic community. Some of them were going towards the Islamic priests, and then we called the Akhuns. They were part of the Islamic revolution, the revolutionary people, whereas the Mujahideens were a bit different. I'm not exactly sure how they were different, but I just know they were. And there was just war between these two groups, and there were bombings and attacks. And the current government, the revolutionary ones, just nearly wiped out the entire Mujahideen. So they haven't been too big, because most of them just got killed.
Okay. I had a question about the protests, and that is just, in the US media, all they really talked about is the Iranian police cracking down on the protesters and being pretty brutal. What I guess that either experiences or stories have you heard of police abuse during the protest, and in more the alternative media, I would hear reports of maybe armed protesters fighting back, and if you either experienced or heard anything about that.
Yeah, well, one of my friends who was at the early protests, he was just standing there, and then an officer came and just told them to disperse. And my friend just stood there, so he got hit with a baton. So there definitely is all that. Then on the day where the things were set to happen, the protest was set to happen. Earlier on, I went out with my dad to buy some stuff, and like looking around the whole the marketplace and the main popular areas, it was just completely full of police officers, just in groups of 3 and 4 all together, all armed, batons, guns, some of them even with riot gear. So yeah, there definitely is a police state there, and they're not afraid to use force. They do all the time. And yeah, I think there was some cases of protesters fighting back. I didn't see myself, I just heard.
All right. One of the people who I guess has taken the blame within Iran for the protesting is the former leader Ahmadinejad. Do you have any idea if he's actually guilty or if he's just a scapegoat, or how he ends up being the man arrested for the protesting?
Wait, was he arrested for it?
Yeah. He may have been released again, but he was arrested, I think, maybe a day after the last kind of big day of protesting.
I don't think anyone thinks he's the reason for it in Iran, because he kind of is the reason for it, but because since he was the president, the big inflation happened under him, and most people just hate him. They think he's just horrible. So to think that he's the one going around and motivating people to come out and protest, no, I wouldn't think that at all.
Oh, all right.
Most of
Thank
the people
you.
protesting are very anti-Ahmadinejad. He might have just been a scapegoat, because him and the supreme leader have a bit of beef going on. Towards the end of his presidency, they got in fights, and I think just recently, just to piss the supreme leader off, Ahmadinejad's been going a bit against them. They're saying this.
Okay. One other thing I've heard recently is that I believe it was Rouhani who released some financial records or some budgetary records that exposed how much
Yeah.
the
Yep.
religious leaders in Iran were getting paid, and that may have either sparked some protesting or at least contributed to some unrest. So I was wondering if you knew anything about that.
Yeah, like talking to my friends while I was there. This happened right in the middle of my stay there. People were really pissed off at Rouhani, and like Rouhani supporters were saying, "Wow, like I'm very disappointed in him. He's putting all this money towards like all these Islamic sectors to get public funding, whereas all these other sectors are getting virtually no public funding." And I was able to convince a bunch of my friends that had become either libertarians or like one of them I've made an anarchist, and he gave me a lot of he did give me a lot of questions. He had a lot of philosophical difficulties, and so all the questions he gave me, I wrote out a 3 or 4 page response to him, which I will be publishing as well. But yeah, that was a major reason. A lot of disappointment for Rouhani, and yeah, another major factor for people's civil unrest is because of oil prices. Fuel in Iran is only about 30 cents, 30 cents per liter, but that's the equivalent of like 30 cents is still a lot more because the average income's a lot lower. And now they're increasing that by 50%. So it's going to become 45 cents per liter. And that's really making people angry as well, because a lot of people can barely afford it as it is. And what the government plans to do by increasing it, the price of oil by 45 cents per liter, is to use the extra money for as taxes, pretty much.
So these people suffering, just to kind of get into this for my own interests, the
Yeah,
legal here, is there any kind of like due process in Iran? How does the legal system work? Is it like a civil law system where the legislature dictates?
I'm not exactly sure how it works, but I know there is a lot of corruption. Like I know there were cases of this madman judge who anyone that came in front of him who was from a different group, they said, "Oh, what? He was carrying a knife. Execution." He just ordered the executions of numerous people. And yeah, it is very corrupt. It's very hard to get weapons, and if you do, you have to get a permit and everything. Not if you're part of the Islamic Revolutionary Guards, though. In that case, it's a lot easier for you to get weapons, which is similar to Hitler Youth, really.
Okay.
But yeah, it's pretty bad, and there's spying going on there as well. Some people that we knew from a while back were telling me that during the 2009 protests, they were or kidnapped virtually by the police, and then all the information about them was kind of shown to them, like, oh, on this day did you do this? What were you doing on this day when you went here? And like, how do you know all this? Hmm.
That's crazy. I wonder, do they does the regime get people to spy on other people like that, or do
Oh
they? Yeah.
yeah. You see billboards everywhere. Like in every city that we traveled, there was at least one billboard in the main entrance to the city saying, what was it saying? It was like, report like bad behavior to this number. It's like help out your fellow brotherhood or some shit like that. But yeah, that crap exists, and then they obviously have, they have a monopoly on the phone system, on the internet, and everything. They can just see everything. They're not much different from the NSA.
I was gonna say, I think our billboards say something like, "If you see something, say something," and then they give the numbers. So,
Yeah.
hey, can I ask you? Do you know, or did you experience what the like popular support was like for the nuclear deal? If people still supported it, or if they cared at all?
People did care. They thought I'm not exactly sure. It's kind of half-half. A lot of people want it to be accepted because they think, oh, it'll advance the country, and they're right. And another group of people say, like, they realize how crazy their government is, and they think, oh shit, maybe if only our government could drop this so that we can have the sanctions removed. So that they kind of think it doesn't matter that we get rid of the nuclear accord, the nuclear deal, and whatever. Just we hope our government would stop being so crazy so that we don't get sanctioned.
All right, and kind of on that same line, what is people's perception of Donald Trump?
For the most part, not very big fans. You find several people here and there who like him, and they think, okay, well, he's a smart guy, or I like this thing he's doing, he's right about this and that. But for the most part, they don't like him. And something else that I've noticed about that is a lot of people in Iran, the smarter people, the ones who are meant to be more enlightened, they do listen to the mainstream media of the West. They listen to the CNN, the BBC, and all that. Because, like, what I think is, like, if someone from North Korea comes to Iran, they'll look at the TV and be like, wow, it's so much freer here. This must be telling the truth. Someone from Iran goes to the West and starts consuming Western media. They think, wow, it's so much freer. This must be true. Whereas us who live in the West, we see that for the crap it is, and we go to alternative media and we think this is the true free stuff.
And do they have an alternative media to look to?
They have their own, yeah, like with the Instagram and Telegram stuff, with the social media, they have their own apps. YouTube isn't really used by anyone because it takes a lot of internet. Most people don't have access to that, to like high speed, high amounts of data. And since it's blocked as well, it just makes it harder. But yeah, on the social media apps, they do. They have channels for. There's one called The Voice of the People, which keeps you all up to date about all the protests that are happening.
Do you have any recommendations, or what kind of media out of Iran do you consume? Specifically, if you have anything in English, but just whatever you think's reliable.
I don't really consume any Iranian media. All my news that I get is either through friends or through family, or people share in groups. And yeah, just don't trust the mainstream. I mean, yeah, I don't really have anything in particular that I listen to from Iran.
So, and this is probably going to be hard for you to determine, and I'm not sure. Maybe
Go ahead.
Correct me if this isn't true. But when you were there, did you get the sense that these protests were legitimate and they weren't like? Was it surprising to you that there was this much popular support from people to come out and really get angry?
Honestly, no. I felt like it was truly legitimate because people have been angry for a very long time, and this has been in the making for a long time. Like, it might have CIA prints on it, but I think it would have happened inevitably. Maybe not now, maybe not to this intensity, but it would have happened because people truly are angry. Maybe the CIA is responsible for planning it, but the people's fury is just, it's legitimate.
Okay. Yeah. That was a good thing to try and get at too, because the reason why I kind of appealed to Kyle's because I wasn't sure if after the fact they kind of came in and they were like, no, these were legitimate, even though it was about eggs or something like that. Because
eggs is what started it. It's mostly because of, like, can you imagine if you have mass unemployment, really high, a lot of inflation, the prices are set to be increased, you have no personal freedom, and just the culture is just the infrastructure and everything is just really, really crappy. And you're sick of the government and their incompetence, and then the egg prices is going like crazily up, and like the oil prices will be going up as well. So a lot of people are just angry about that. Just the eggs is what sparked it, whereas the fuel for it was there to begin with.
So I was just going to say that it seemed like, after the fact it might have changed, but it seemed like Danny McAdams and Ron Paul were pretty certain that it was fishy smelling. And it's good to get your perspective. So if I could bring you back again, just to go through you want to tell the story of like your visit. So when you get there, you get through customs, and then how many days had you been there when this started to flare up, and where were you when it first started?
I was there for about 20 days when it started, because I was there for about like 22, 23 days altogether. And so it was in my very last days where this whole shit started. First few days it was kind of normal. When I got there, my uncle drove us from Tehran back to Hamadan. And yeah, unloaded, stayed at my grandparents' place, met up with all my friends. Problem was it was mid-semester there. Because the Australian school year, I'm sure you know as well, it starts in like the beginning of the year. Like now is when it starts. My university starts in a month, and it finishes around November. So then we get the Christmas holidays is our summer holidays, which makes sense because it's summer here. So then, since all my friends there, they were having their midterms, so that kind of sucked. I couldn't meet up with them as much as I liked to, but yeah, still saw them all, hung around. The food there's really good. You get a lot more food. Food's just a lot cheaper. Like, absolutely, a lot more cheaper than like what you get here at McDonald's for, I don't know, like $5. For that $5, you can get like 3 times the amount of food. So yeah.
So
And
go
yeah.
ahead.
Yeah. With one of my friends, I went to the university with him, and I was just shocked because the same propaganda that I see at my university here, I saw there, just different for different ideals, different ideas. Like here, you see lots of support for like a lot of anti-Israel propaganda, and a lot of pro-Islamic Revolution, and pro-Shia Islam propaganda. Whereas at my university here, I see just posters after posters by socialists saying how capitalism fuels inequality and sexism, how capitalism starts wars, which obviously is just retarded. But yeah, a lot of parallels of the university, the whole culture. I think at this point, I just believe that all universities are just indoctrination chambers, and that I'm just there to get my degree and get the hell out of there.
Yeah, you can see it's the molding of the dependent classes. The intellectual class aligns with the state to mold public opinion, and yeah, it's crazy how that is.
Yeah. Yeah. What Hayek said about the intellectuals, like I just watched the Tom Woods episode about him. I reckon that holds true. It really does. The intellectuals, a lot of them are just not needed.
Yeah. You get the Paul Krugmans of the world and
Yeah.
destroyer of nations. So, yeah, so anything obviously you got back fine. Were all of your friends okay? I know you said that one got hit by a baton. That's scary.
Yeah, they're all good.
Okay. That's good.
They're all fine, yeah. Like,
what did they think? Your friends specifically, the ones that were in university.
they all thought it was bullshit, especially after how I pointed out. Like most people there are already against the Islamic government, but there's another problem that I noticed there as well. Like going to the bookshops, I looked around. I went to a couple of bookshops. Although there's one really big one that I went to look for the economic section, try to find any Austrian econ, and I did. I found a couple of Hayek books and a book on like a collection of essays about Mises. Each one of them was by Rothbard, and yeah, I found Anarchy, State, and Utopia, which I bought.
Damn.
Robert Nozick's book. I was pretty surprised to find that. I was like, wow. And what else? And I found the 2 treatises on government by John Locke. So I bought all of them. And what I was shocked is there's a lot of Marxism, a lot of communist books. Like when you go to the philosophy section, it's just filled with communist books, whereas there's a tiny bit of Austrian econ or libertarianism at all. But there are some Iranian economists who are very free market and support Hayek and the Austrian tradition. Like I bought one of these books and I was looking through the catalog of other books they published and translated, and I saw this book. I'm like, huh. Like I saw this translation. I was like, well, that sounds a lot like Power and Market. And then I looked at it, I'm like, oh, written by Murray Rothbard. Wow.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe they actually had translated a Rothbard book.
There you
and
go.
They have Economics in One Lesson as well by Hazlitt. But that's about it. They don't really have that many books on the free market.
So kind of moving forward, what do you see in the future? Like when at the state when you left, you know, what do you think will happen in the future? Do you think this will kind of spur up again eventually? Is that inevitable?
Yeah, I reckon it's inevitable, but I think there's going to be more and more cultural shifts, like slow, gradual cultural shifts. You'll slowly become more and more westernized, and then it'll either, oh, I'm not sure what's going to happen. I mean, either it can become like full on feministy, like in the US, but like I argued with one of my friends who calls himself a feminist there. And he's saying, "Well, I'm a feminist." I was explaining to him like the whole Me Too movement, like how cultural Marxism is just bullshit. And then he says, "Oh no, but when he means feminism, he literally means the equal equality under the law, not the whole oppression by society type of crap." But that's just what follows. So I'm not sure whether or not Iran can be safe from that, because there are extremist groups. There are lots of communists, especially in the arts classes. I mean, it's the same as it is in the West. Like I've got a friend who's in the art, who's in I met up with him once. He's studying graphic design or something, and he's a bit crazy. He's like a communist, and I really didn't have the I couldn't be stuffed arguing with him. Like it was just, you know, like okay. It's like I can't accept liberalism. I'm a socialist. I was like, okay, whatever. Just
Yeah,
move on.
not an argument.
Yeah, I couldn't be stuffed making one. I could have just easily just said, oh, well, how do you fix the incentive problem, knowledge problem, and calculation problem? And how does it morally feel to take away people's right to have property?
Didn't calculate. Probably avoided the question. Yeah, like in that situation, you always wonder, like, oh, how far do I want to press this? Do I really want to get into this verbal joust right now?
Yeah,
'Cause-
like from my experience, every time I stay like true to my ideals and I argue with someone, it goes on for hours and hours. Like just yesterday, I was arguing the idea of covenant societies to like a friend of mine, and I don't know, he was just making all these random points like, oh, do you really think people would travel all this much to a neighboring place to work if they live like that? I'm like, first of all, why not? Second of all, a lot of societies can be right next to each other, and like under a free market, there'll be a lot less unemployment because there'll be a lot more businesses being made. So the people have a lot more choices in employment. But like, yeah, it's argued for that for about 2 hours. But yeah, just couldn't be stuffed doing any of that.
yeah. Yeah. Well, we're kind of running up against the time barrier here. Kyle, did you have anything else that you were wondering about the protests?
I guess a little bit about the protests was just in the United States, they can't make it out to be, especially Donald Trump, that part of the reason the protests are taking place is because of the Iranians being an expansionist power and trying to take over the rest of the Middle East, and they'll cite Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Palestine, and Yemen. I was just wondering, is there support among the Iranian people for maybe like the Syrian civil war and Iran's role there, or kind of what's the position of the people there?
For the most part, most people don't really care that much. Some people that do care though, they understand that I don't know how to explain it. The US and like the West shouldn't interfere with Syria, but they're not overly huge fans of, yeah, let's go to Syria and help out with them or whatever. They just think, okay, just let it be. Most people like they don't support this for expansionism, even though that might be a part of it. What they really want to support is just to get their freedom. That's the overall feel of it.
Yeah, right on the old Ron Paul people vote with their bellies concept. That's the reason nobody is big into the foreign policy stuff, is because it's not about what's going on in front of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel that a lot, certainly going on here. But there's just so much going on right now. I mean, just getting into Turkey invading northern Syria, and it's a crazy time. Maybe it's just that I'm paying attention now.
Oh, it's been going on for a while.
Yeah, no kidding. Like I said, just starting to pay attention now and trying to figure out. Have you spent a lot of time studying foreign policy, Shaheen? I mean, you're kind of in the thick of it.
Sorry, what was that?
I said, have you spent a lot of time studying foreign policy, Shaheen? I was going to say you're kind of in the thick of it, so you probably understand this kind of thing a little bit more than someone like me.
Not necessarily. Like what I hear from Ron Paul and Daniel McAdams, really, and like Tom Woods and them. It's just I've just learned to be anti-war and anti-intervention, and that's just it. Like I joined the college Republicans group of my university, the Young Liberal Society, because the right wing group in Australia is called Liberal, and the Democrats are called Labor. So I joined that just for the sake of having a group of other right leaning, like pro small government, at least in philosophically. Just joining them, hang around with them. And there was a guy who was a neocon. Like I said, he supports John McCain and thinks like Ron Paul is nuts. And I was just smiling. I didn't want to argue. I mean, I'm already part of just being part of that group on the right is already like a fringe group in university. Don't need to make myself even smaller of a group and argue. Well, actually, like you see, I could just say like bombing and like military intervention increases the debt. It costs trillions of dollars. And then secondly, you're killing people. Then you have migrant crisis again like this. And yeah, then they come welfare, and then there's more terrorists. You just get angry, you're bombing. I could have just explained all that, but just couldn't be stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember being in undergrad. You at some point you just can't really get through to people, and that's why you need them to come to you now instead.
Yeah. I just really want a group to hang around with who at least right leaning. I mean, I don't expect to get any sort of philosophical shit from them. They're part of the mainstream. You never get this kind of crap from the mainstream. I don't even expect to convert many of them over. I just want a group to hang around with.
Yeah. Well, you have the online, online community.
Oh, yeah. Online community is great, but unfortunately, there's not a Adelaide anarcho-capitalist society.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
No, that would be awesome. Yeah, but no, I'm gonna have to get you on sometime in the future just to chat normal style. I know we wanted to kind of talk about some libertarian drama happening last week.
Yeah.
But I'm so busy with school and stuff, but and that's the impetus for the hard stop today. But did you want to just share with the audience what your Twitter handle is, how people can follow you? I forgot to mention that you also contribute to Actual Anarchy, and you have a few great articles up there as well. So
cheers. There's a bunch of other ones coming soon. I'm planning this like with all the libertarian drama going on about different types of libertarianism, like whether they culturally sway left or right. I've got a huge essay coming up soon. I'm just going to go through every single argument that they have on either side, just analyze it, so it can be like a go-to thing. Like you don't have to sit down and watch like 10 hours worth of videos just to understand what this group's talking about. And yeah, I just got a couple of arguments coming.
Awesome. No, that sounds useful as hell. Just having a quick handy guide so people can figure it out. I was looking here. Our episode together was episode 35. So that's at libertywweekly.net/35. As well, if you go to actualanarchy.com and if you search Shaheen, that would get you, wouldn't it? Your article?
Yeah.
And Kyle as well. Do you want to tell the folks? I know you've appeared on the show recently, but do you want to reiterate your podcast and the work that you're doing?
Yeah, my podcast is Foreign Policy Focused, talk about foreign policy stuff. Tomorrow night after the State of the Union, I'm getting Will Porter on, and we're going to hopefully do a pretty quick reaction and turn around to the State of the Union and have a response for your drive Wednesday morning. Really talking about the foreign policy stuff. So, check out the podcast. I do a daily news roundup, libertarianinstitute.org for everything. And thanks for having me on, Pat.
Yeah, no problem. I was glad to get your perspective on this, and the right questions to ask. So yeah, definitely appreciate both you guys. Really glad having you on, and
glad to be on.
Yeah, I'm sure the audience will hear a lot more from you guys in the future. So cheers.
Thanks.
See ya.